A legal expert says Trump attorney Michael Van Der Veen summed up nicely the double standard on display by the Democrat House managers in his closing impeachment argument. One America's John Hines has more.
Mr. Kamenar, I know you're counsel for the National Legal and Policy Center, and you've been talking about this hypocrisy on the part of the Democrats as this impeachment effort has taken place against the former president. The president's attorney, Mr. Van Der Veen, said in his closing remarks, it's a hypocrisy that the House managers have laid at the feet of this chamber. What do you make of him talking about this hypocrisy, this double standard with regard to some of these Democratic lawmakers?
Well, he hit the nail on the head, Van Der Veen, in his closing argument by exposing the hypocrisy of the Democrats, where they're accusing Trump of inciting violence for telling his supporters to peacefully march to the Capitol building. And at the same time, these same Democrats are condoning, and were condoning, the violence during the Black Lives Matter riots, where they were burning Black-owned businesses, officers were shot. And then Kamala Harris actually raised money for a bail fund to let these rioters out of jail so they can go out and do some more damage. So the hypocrisy was very clear, and Van Der Veen was correct to expose that.
It's a hypocrisy that the House managers have laid at the feet of this chamber. The House managers suggested in this recent history is irrelevant to the current proceedings. But not only is Democrats' behavior surrounding last year's riots highly relevant as precedent, and not only does it reveal the dishonesty and insincerity of this entire endeavor, it also provides crucial context that should inform our understanding of the events that took place on January 6th. Many of the people who infiltrated the Capitol took pictures of themselves and posted them on social media. To some, it seems, they thought that it was all a game. They apparently believed that violent mobs, destruction of property, rioting, assaulting police, and vandalizing historic treasures was somehow now acceptable in the United States. Where might they have gotten that idea? I would suggest to you that it was not from Mr. Trump. It was not Mr. Trump. It was not anyone in the Republican Party that spent the 6 months immediately prior to the Capitol assault giving rhetorical aid and comfort to mobs, making excuses for rioters, celebrating radicalism, and explaining that angry, frustrated, and marginalized people were entitled to blow off steam like that. As a nation, we must ask ourselves, how did we arrive at this place where rioting and pillaging would become commonplace? I submit to you that it was month after month of political leaders and media personalities bloodthirsty for ratings, glorifying civil unrest, and condemning the reasonable law enforcement measures that are required to quell violent mobs. Hopefully, we can all leave this chamber in uniform agreement that all rioting is bad, and that law enforcement deserves our respect and support. That has been Mr. Trump's position from the very beginning. The real question in this case is, who is ultimately responsible for such acts of mayhem and violence when they are committed? The House Democrats want two different standards, one for themselves and one for their political opposition. They have carried out a grossly unconstitutional effort to punish Mr. Trump for protected First Amendment speech. It's an egregious violation of his constitutional rights. Since he uttered not a single word encouraging violence, this action can only be seen as an effort to censor disfavored political speech and discriminate against a disapproved viewpoint. It is an unprecedented action with the potential to do grave and lasting damage to both the presidency and the separation of powers and the future of democratic self-government. Yesterday, we played you a video of countless Democrat members of the Senate urging their supporters to fight. We showed you those videos not because we think you should be forcibly removed from office for saying those things, but because we know you should not be forcibly removed from office for saying those things. But recognize the hypocrisy.
So we're following up on this, and when we may even file some complaints here against the Democrats for their altering of the evidence that the House managers presented to the Senate in the trial. There's actually evidence where they took certain tweets and changed information on those tweets, which violates all kinds of legal and House ethics rules. So we're going to be investigating that and continue to call them out when we see this double standard.
Paul Kamenar, counsel with the National Legal and Policy Center. Thank you for talking to us on One American News, sir.
Thank you, John. Good to be with you.